Welcome to our first CloudBytes of 2020. We'll be talking about bank feeds inside of Sage Intacct. A lot of our consultants and some of our staff get a lot of questions from our Intacct customers on how to set these up, the cost, what are the benefits of the bank feeds. So we just figured we'd kind of do a 30-minute presentation on how to set these up, show you, what the point of these are, and hopefully you can get to utilizing them. Just a couple things before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, there should be a chat box on the GoToWebinar side panel. So feel free to just type that in during the presentation, and we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A. And I did just want to remind everybody that we do offer these CloudByte webinars every month at no cost. We've gotten a lot of questions, what's the price of these? Does it happen every month? So this is a resource for all of our Sage Intacct customers, and you should get monthly emails on them. So just keep an eye out for those. It's just a good resource for you guys. So with that being said, thanks again for joining us, and I will hand it off to Tabitha.
Great, thanks so much. This is Tabitha Schmaltz. I am one of the senior technology consultants here at Dean Dorton. And I've probably worked with many of you on Sage Intacct, either your implementation or on support questions related to that. So today we are going to be talking about bank feeds, which is a newer feature that just came out in one of the last quarterly updates. So here's our agenda for the day. We're going to be just kind of going over generally what the bank feeds are, how they're being used, and then we'll walk you through how to set them up in your own Intacct instance. You're also able to utilize bank feeds in order to record your bank transactions over to any open invoices. So if you have customer payments that need to be recorded, we're able to do that really quickly without having to do multiple entries. And then we'll open up the lines or at least go through the chats for some of those frequently asked questions. All right, so bank feeds just came out in the release 3 of 2019, which is in November. So some of you may have been involved in the beta program. Otherwise, it became available to you around the time that we finished up at Advantage. So bank feeds, in a nutshell, is a way that we're able to utilize a cloud feed system in order to connect many banks across the U.S. And even some international bank capabilities into Intacct. What this helps us do is that we're no longer required to download the bank activity, put it into Excel, format that Excel, and then import it back into the system in order to reconcile with that auto match or auto match with review. So we're having a lot less steps in order for us to reconcile. So we're able to prompt that bank feed. We can actually just refresh, and it stays connected. And this will bring through all of the transactions just at a click of the button. Let's see. All right, so this is just kind of a visual to help you understand how the bank feeds work. So you have your bank transactions, and right now we do cover thousands of those U.S. banks, and it is expanding all the time. We'll talk a little bit later about how to add additional banks if you don't find yours when we go through the process. And then those banks will move in. You have two ways of getting that data into Intacct. The first is the one that most of us are used to, and that's that file import. So many of us were exporting our data or exporting our statement, and then moving that data into an Excel template and then converting it to CSV and importing it. And then if it didn't work properly, we have to reconfigure. And so you do a lot of massage. The new process actually utilizes the banking cloud. And then either way, whether we have the banking cloud or that file import, now we have the ability to match, create, reconcile, and approve those transactions as part of our reconciliation process. So by utilizing the banking cloud, we're actually streamlining away from that manual process and doing something that's a lot more automatic and automated to allow those matches to happen easily for us, and that we don't have to hunt and search for those unentered transactions. We can actually create them a lot quicker. Now, what does this mean for you? you're going to have a much quicker insight into what's actually happening with your cash, and you'll actually save time having to enter those transactions again. On the customer payment side, we also are able to match those deposits to transactions that are occurring in the system. So before, again, we would have the deposits that would need to be recorded. We would receive a customer payment inside of Intacct, and then we would have to match the transactions or inside of the system on the import. Now we have the banking cloud bring over those transactions, and we're able to see all of the deposits and match the deposits to customer transactions in order to relieve the receivables and be able to recognize the payments. So right now, this is a standard process for all of Australia as well, and the UK native, for any UK native clients that are also using Sage Intacct. All right, so we're going to actually jump right into Sage so that we can take a look at this. Go ahead and expand my screen. All right, so there's a few ways that we're going to go about. First, we're going to talk about setting up Sage Intacct and the bank feeds to have that come through the bank cloud, and then we'll work through how it will actually work on a day-to-day basis. Just so you know, in order for you to be able to utilize the bank feed technology, you do need to be using Action UI, which is the newer user interface. If you are still on the old interface, you will want to make sure you've updated in order to use this functionality. So long as you are a full or limited admin, you can come into Company and then go to Subscriptions. This is under the admin side, and then Subscriptions. And then you're able to turn on and off different subscriptions for different modules that you want to enable. So I'm going to just scroll down. It's actually a little further than you would think. You're going to go to Sage Cloud Services. So I've already turned this on, so my button is green, but if it is not turned on yet, it'll look like a gray button like this. You'll want to go ahead and flick the button on, and then you'll go to Configure. Okay. Once you're in the configuration screen, you'll want to make sure that your email is here for the contact for notifications. And this will actually be an editable box the first time. And then you'll want to click this Enable for Bank Feeds. So once the box is enabled, it cannot be disabled. And it may take a few minutes for all of your entities to have a status of subscribed. Now, you notice here that I am enabling this at the top level. When you enable this at the top level, this will subscribe all entities that you currently have set up inside of Intacct. So setting it up at the top level, all of your entities will be subscribed. Now, if there's an additional entity that is created in the future, you will have to slide into the subscriptions, and you will have to enable it for that new entity as you go. So that will be a manual process for new entities, and you have to subscribe at the top level in order for any of the entities to be subscribed. You can't subscribe to just the lower entities and not the top level. All right. So once you have the subscription here, you go ahead and say save. And like I said, it'll just take a few moments for your banks to connect and for you to be able to utilize that. But once the banks are selected, there's a couple things that you're going to want to do. Or I'm sorry, once bank feeds is enabled, there's a few things you're going to want to do. The first is you're going to want to come into Company, Admin, and then Users. And you're going to want to edit your users to make sure that they have access into the new cash management features. So we're going to just go ahead and we're going to adjust Emma here. And we're going to say Emma needs to have permissions in order to access the bank feeds. So if I come in here and I take a look at her roles, I can see that she has an admin role, and that's the one that we're going to edit. So if you're not utilizing roles, you'll be able to edit their permissions right from the screen. I'm going to come here to roles, go to admin and then subscriptions. We're going to go to cash management and permissions. And we're going to look for this bank transactions line. And we do want to enable the list and view functionality for bank transactions. And we'll go ahead and save that. And then once that's been saved, you can go ahead and save on the roll. And then that will be updated to all of your users. The next functionality that we need to do is actually connecting our bank account to the bank cloud. So for here, we're going to go to company. We'll go to cash management. And you'll notice here, first of all, under transactions, we have a new functionality that says bank transactions, and we'll visit that in just a moment. But from cash management, we're going to go to setup. And then we're going to select checking or savings, whichever type of account that we're connecting. So I've already connected this account here, but we'll just walk through the process on a new account. I will click Edit on the bank account, and we'll go to the Banking Cloud tab. Now, if you've enabled the functionality, but you do not yet see the Banking Cloud tab, it's okay. Sometimes it does take just a little bit to get the accounts connected. Just refresh and come back in, and it should be there really soon. From here, you'll go ahead and click Connect. And you're going to search for your bank. So if it's one of these ones that you can see on the screen right away, you can always just select it just by clicking. Otherwise, you can type in the name of your bank. And then it's going to ask you if you are authorized to be able to connect to the bank. Otherwise, you may have, depending on the bank, it may also prompt you to enter in your banking credentials that you would use when you normally log in on a website. So however that reads, you'll go ahead and populate the information and then say agree and connect the bank. So this is a demo, so I get a little warning here, and I'm going to just go ahead and say yes. So then here, you're going to be asked to enter a start date. So Intacct recommends that we go back at least 30 days to pull data. You don't have to. You can absolutely start with today's date. But anything past 30 days is questionable whether the data will all come over just because of banks limitations. Sometimes banks don't leave more than 30 days transactions available for us to pull through the bank feed technology. You can always start with today's date, or you can move it back, a few dates, and then go ahead and say all done. Since I've already connected another bank account, I'm not going to go through this process, but this is up to you. If you put a date that's really far in the past, just understand you may not actually get all the transactions in that you're hoping to. It's really going to depend on your bank's transactions that they have available. Now, one thing to also note is you do not need to be a full or limited admin to connect a bank. If your user has the ability to add or edit a bank account, they will be able to connect the banks as long as they have the credentials in order to connect the bank. All right. So once you have your connections completed, I'm going to go back to the bank account so I can show you this. You'll get a bar that looks just like this one, and it will ask you to validate if this is the correct bank. So you'll see what Intacct calls the bank, what the banking cloud is called, so you want to make sure those look the same. And then there'll be a button over here on the side that will say confirm. So once you've confirmed it, it will go ahead and pull the transactions down for you, and it will show a status of connected or disconnected, depending on whether you have left it to be connected or if you've chosen to disconnect at a later time. All right. So now from this point, the transactions are moving into the system, and we're really going to be noticing them and working with them through the bank reconciliation process. So bank reconciliation is accessed through cash management, all, and then under reconciliation, we want to go to bank new. If you are still using the old bank reconciliation, you will want to transition on your next reconciliation to bank new for the new functionality. And on this screen, you will select your bank account that you want to reconcile, your statement beginning date if it's your first time reconciling, the statement ending date, and the ending balance. The other thing that you'll notice here is we now have a button that is called Matching Attributes. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Intacct now allows us to be able to match incoming transactions against items that are already in the system based on these attributes, and we have the ability to edit them. So you'll see that I actually can match transactions based on their date, their document number, or their amount. At a minimum, we match by an amount, but we do have the ability to remove document or date, or we can add them back in, and we can decide in what order they are important. So you do have that functionality for both your checks and also for the deposits. Once you've set your attributes the way that you'd like, go ahead and say OK. And then we'll say continue here. You can also see here the bank feed does say that it is connected. That's also helpful to notice before we do our reconciliation that we are in a connected state. So before we move into the transactions, let's go ahead and look at this top bar here. We have added a few additional pieces. I'm kind of really zoomed in to make sure everybody can see. But in addition to the normal last reconciliation, book balance, etc., we now have our bank feed status showing a connection, the last date that the bank feed was brought in, the last bank feed transaction, and what the bank status is. So right now it's currently refreshing. If we know that there's additional transactions that we need to pull in, we can click refresh, and that will again bring in any transactions from the bank feed into the reconciliation screen. Now, the bank tab here will bring in all the transactions that we have that have come into the system. These were brought in in the old system, we would have brought these in with our imports, but now they're being brought in automatically through bank feeds. And this will default here to a state of unmatched. And it starts with our checks and debits. So you're able to check to see what items have been matched, partially matched, or if you want to see all transactions that came in, you can edit this filter settings here. I'm going to go ahead and switch mine to matched, and I'm going to scroll all the way over, and I'm going to apply those filters. So in my case, it tells me that there wasn't any transactions that actually matched between the bank and Intacct. But I am able to see my unmatched transactions. And it could just be because of status or different filter settings that I have. But let's say that I know this $10,000 check needs to be matched. I'll scroll over to the right here, and I'll go ahead and click match. And it will allow me to see transactions that are in the system and how I would like to match that. So this one is 10,300. That transaction actually isn't in the system, so I would know that I need to enter that into the system. Now, you can partially match if you know a few transactions need to go together. You can click match, and I could say, let's just say, for example, this one right here is the match. I can say this one right here is the match, and it will become a partial match. This will become on my partially matched list. And the balance of that check is now here saying I still need to match another $1,700 in order to clear that check. Okay. If your transactions match, so in this demo environment, it's a little bit more difficult, and I can tell you one of the reasons why. Let me just apply these filters real quick. So one of the struggles is when you have checks that have the same number in them or values that are the same, the system will say, well, we can't match it automatically for you because the credentials that we were using is matching based on the dollar amount and the check number. Because those meet multiple criteria, we may not be able to match the check automatically. So this is where it's important to make sure your system is set up to only allow transactions to use a check number one time or use a document number once, etc. Okay. The other side of bank feeds is going to be the customer payments. So for customer payments, we're going to go to cash management and then go to that bank transactions page. So bank transaction lists here actually lists all partially matched and unmatched customer payments for all banks. Banks are created at the top. If you have your bank account, it's created at the top level. All of the bank transactions that for those accounts are going to be at the top level. If your bank is created at an entity level, the bank transactions will only be listed at those entity levels. So you may have to go to the entity in order to see those transactions. You can see there isn't the ability to show the private accounts like we can do on other filter screens. So what we can do here is we can actually create deposits or match the deposits as we're going. You do have the ability to filter by your bank account ID. So if you're somebody who is maybe working through all the deposits on a single account, you can work through that one account to apply them. So what you'll do is you'll find the credit that you're looking for. So maybe I'm looking for this 2203.57 and I need to match that to something. So I can come in here and click view. And I could say, oh, this is a payment. I know I'm receiving a payment for a client. I'm going to click receive payment. And then I will select the client that it belongs to. And then I can see what invoices are available for me to receive that payment against. So I'll say this is the correct payment here. That looks good. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Just like we did with the payments over inside of the reconciliation screen, you do have the ability to apply a partial amount, or if you have a larger deposit that needs to be credited against multiple client receivables, you do have the ability to do that. The balance will just stay unresolved in the system until you've applied it appropriately. And then if that balance is going to be resolved with like a journal entry or some other point that it's been recorded onto your general ledger, you can just wait and match those up at the reconciliation itself. If I click done, that amount will come off of this screen here. So this is a way that you're able to match those transactions. Again, this is a lot of transactions, but if you're coming in on a regular basis, daily, weekly, however often your cash processor allows for, you're obviously going to have maybe a potentially much lower list, and it will be a lot more accurate of your cash picture. All right, so we're going to move into the frequently asked questions that we have. The first one here is there a cost to use Sage Intacct's bank feeds? No. Well, the answer is no for most people. Sage Intacct does allow the bank feed to be used for all clients up to 200 bank accounts per client. So if you have more than 200 bank accounts, there is a charge for that 201st bank account. But most of us are operating with many accounts less than that, so you should be fine to utilize bank feeds at no additional cost. If you cannot find your bank on the list, there is a prompt on that bank screen. If you're not able to find yours, you can submit your bank account information back to Intacct, and they are adding banks very often. So you can go ahead and request that your bank be added to the list. And then lastly, how often should I reconcile? So we recommend reconciling regularly. If that means once a month, and you understand the amount of transactions, your cash picture would be accurate at that point. Daily is great, weekly is great. So the more regularly you're reconciling, the more accurate a picture you're going to have, and it's going to save you a lot of time on that month-end close.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome, Tabitha. Thank you. I'll let any questions come in. Again, there should be that chat box if you guys think of something. And while I'm letting these come in, can you skip to the next slide, Tabitha? I just wanted to say something.
Sure.
Um, so again, if you think of any questions later on, we always have our support email address at erpsupport@ddaaftech.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. And then, again, like I said earlier, these webinars are on a monthly basis at no charge. The next one is going to be a really big one since the first release of 2020 is coming out in February. It comes out Friday, February 21st. So we'll do the CloudBytes kind of a highlight overview the following Wednesday. So again, keep your eye out for those emails. And let's see, I am getting a couple questions, Tabitha. So if I turn the bank feeds feature on, do you have to use it? Or can it just stay on in case you have to use it?
So yeah, you can turn it on. You can enable the subscription and then not connect your bank. You can connect your bank and then elect to just match your Intacct transactions manually and not utilize the bank feeds. And you do not have to utilize the bank transactions in order to record payments from your customers. So you don't have to use it. But, odds are if you're recording those pieces of information, it may be beneficial. You're not required to use it if you turn it on. Just know that you can't turn it back off.
Okay. And then, there's a lot of questions coming in. Does this work with the Fed? I don't know if that means Federal Credit Union. Do you know, Tabitha?
I'm not really sure I would just recommend, trying to log in, and then you can go through the banks and see what's included with the bank list. You can request it be added if it's not on the list, and if that doesn't answer the question, feel free to reach out to erpsupport@ddaaftech, and we can try elaborating on that one for you.
Okay. One said that means Federal or Fed Reserve Bank. So does that work with that?
I'm not sure if that's a bank on the list, to be honest. I would just check the bank list.
Okay. And then are feeds available for credit card accounts?
At this time, it is a bank. It's for banking transactions. So I've been told it is checking and savings accounts only. I don't know how that will work with the credit card accounts, but I'm happy to check on that and then respond back to that person.
Okay. And then for the initial bank feed feature, would you start imports from the date of the last cash reconcile? If that makes sense.
So if you have not done a reconciliation, the system, we recommend going back 30 days. If you have done bank reconciliations already, then, the answer is going to be different. So the question being, if you're starting with the initial, let's say that you've already done bank feeds in the past, or bank reconciliations in the past, you're turning on bank feeds as new. I would just do the import as of the current date or the date of the last reconciliation, just to make sure you're covering all your transactions. You can go back further if you'd like. You don't have to match, you just know that those items have already been cleared. It's just, you'll just need to know that all of the outstanding items from the last reconciliation are accurate.
Okay, awesome. And then the last one that came in too is, what if the bank does not include the 00 in front of the check?
Well, if the bank doesn't include the 00, like the leading zeros, and you have the leading zeros in Intacct, then the check numbers aren't going to match. So I would recommend not matching by document number and instead matching by amount and date, or just taking off the date and just trying to match by amount. If that is a big issue for you, I would almost recommend that the Intacct drops the leading zeros. So that way you're matching with how your bank feed is bringing the data in.
Okay. And then let me ask a couple more that are coming in. And then again, if you think of something, please feel free to reach out. And then you will get the recording and slide deck of this. One person asked, how do you ensure you're not importing the same data twice?
Well, so you turn the system on and you're matching when you go to confirm that bank account. You can only connect a bank account once. Um, and what I mean by that is if you have a checking account 12345 and you connect it to the bank, you'll confirm before you turn on the bank feeds that you have the right one selected with your bank. You cannot add a second feed to that same GL, that same bank account. Now, the only thing that's stopping you from connecting that same feed to the next bank account 98765, is going to be a manual check. So you'll want to make sure that you are connecting that properly. And then it's only going to bring the data in once from that bank feed. So as long as you've connected the bank account one time to one account, the data will only come in once. And it's not automatically posting to your GL. Remember, it's going to match the data that you already have in the GL. And then if you need to create any transactions from there, this is just going to be highlighting the information that has not been auto-matched.
Okay, awesome. And then just to confirm, do you get a cost when it's 200, or does this include 200 transaction in total for all the banks or for each one? Can you clarify on that?
So there is no limit on the number of transactions for the banks. The cost is 200 bank accounts. So if you have one bank account that has 1 million transactions, that is entirely included in the current bank feed model. But if you have 201 bank accounts, each with 5 transactions, you will be charged for that 201st bank account. The current bank feed only allows for 200 bank accounts per client.
Okay, awesome. Well, we are out of time. I'm glad to see so many people asking so many questions. So again, if you asked anything else, we'll follow up with you. But again, just keep an eye out on those emails, the recording slide deck, and let us know if you have any other questions. So Tabitha, thanks for your presentation, and I hope everyone else has a great day.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.